Wolfe Glick is the biggest name in competitive Pokemon, with an unrivaled amount of tournament wins in the official Pokemon video game championships and a YouTube channel that's introduced millions of casual
Bro, he's growing so much. It's crazy how many views he's getting.
fans to competitive play. Wolfe is inarguably the most iconic player in Pokemon. With his channel's enormous boom in popularity during the Scarlet and Violet era, he's made quite a few new fans, many of whom don't fully grasp the extent of Wolfie's competitive history, stretching all the way back to Pokemon Black and White in 2011.
Damn.
As a fellow old head player myself, I've been there from the start, and I'm putting that experience to good use here by going through the moments in Wolfe's Pokemon career that cemented him as a pillar of the competitive scene.
He also had a lot of haircuts through the years. Damn.
We'll be going over the times that perfectly encapsulate not only Wolfe's play, but also his personality and overall legacy in the game. In short, the moments that helped shape Wolfe Glick into the icon he is today. My criteria for that might differ from yours though, so let me know if I missed any of your favorite moments in the comments below. Without further ado, here are my top 5 most iconic Wolfie moments.
Top 5 moments.
Number 5, Wolfe vs. Ray. For number 5, we're looking way back to Worlds 2012. At the time, Wolfe was still a young upstart, well respected for his play and some huge tournament wins, but not yet the popular figure he is today. That was all about to change though, with Wolfe making finals of only his second world championship, with a unique team featuring Harvest Executor, a never used Pokemon, along.
So he's been doing this since Black and White, and Black and White came out in 2010? So he's been at the top level for 15 years. Sheesh.
With a unique strategy that skill swapped Levitate onto Heatran to get rid of its 4 times ground weakness. It was a fan favorite team, and Wolfe could taste victory. However, the last person standing in his way was a familiar.
I'm sorry, but you're not catching me doing this. I don't care. This is a crazy look. Bro's look with his bulge like this. Damn. But fair play is probably very good at Pokemon.
Familiar face in Ray Rizzo, the reigning 2-time world champion who had knocked Wolfe out of his first world championship in top 8 the previous year. It's now finals, with Wolfe down 1 loss in the best of 3 set. However, the tide may be turning, since he's finally found an opening to break through Ray's otherwise unbreakable defenses. After baiting a defensive switch-in of Ray's Tyranitar and bringing in his own Hitmontop, Wolfe has the upper hand, with the combination of close combat and one of Heatran's attacks KOing any of Ray's Pokemon in the Tyranitar slot. Wolfe predicts Tyranitar will leave itself open to this pressure, fires off a close combat, but hits into Cresselia. Wolfe later confirmed that this was a misclick. The pressure of Worlds Finals against his greatest
brother misclicked in a final or in a tournament. That's crazy. It can happen to everyone.
Rival breaking him in the final moments. This turn is too much for him to come back from. It was his last chance to crack Ray's defenses, and Wolfe loses Game 2 and his chance at the World Championship that year. Now, it may seem odd to include this lowlight in Wolfe's highlight reel of a career, but at the time, this was a key part of his legacy. Even so many years later, Wolfe's losing record to Ray is a major sticking point against him in the VGC greatest debate. However, what makes this moment iconic to me is that Wolfe didn't let it define him. He could have forever been known as the guy who close combated Cresselia in Worlds Finals, but instead, he reached deep down, put in the work, and years later returned to the World's Finals for a chance at redemption. Today, most people see Wolfe as a player who just wins. Simple as that. But I see him as a player who rises up strong.
Very cool comeback story. From misclicking to becoming world champion, that's crazy.
Number 4, Milotic Magic. Ask any top-level competitor and they'll tell you that defensive play and switching mastery are Wolfe's most dominant skills in Pokemon. Not only does he flourish using abilities.
Of course he's using Incineroar. Of course. But he's the GOAT.
Like Intimidate to lower attack and leave opponents' offenses weakened and frustrated, he also knows how to use their Intimidate against them with Pokemon like Milotic. Milotic is a Pokemon with underwhelming stats and moves for competition, but a valuable ability in competitive, which raises its special attack stat by 2 stages when any stat is lowered, including its attack stat. Unfortunately, without a competitive boost, Milotic often struggles to make an impact on battles. As a result, competitive players typically avoid leading Intimidate into teams with Milotic to deny it that boost. At the 2015 US National Championship,
great strategy because a lot of people are using Intimidate because it's one of the best abilities in the game. So good counterplay.
Wolfe recognized this tendency and exploited it, building a team that perfectly abuses Milotic's strengths with a downright devious bait. He'd lead Kangaskhan and Landorus, the 2 strongest physical attackers in the format. Predicting an Intimidate switch to weaken them, he'd immediately switch Kangaskhan out into Milotic. Since Kangaskhan was often the fastest Pokemon in the field, and switch order is determined by Pokemon speed, Milotic would switch in before Intimidate activated and receive the competitive boost. To add insult to injury, Wolfe would U-turn with his Landorus and bring Kangaskhan in, now pressuring with a boosted Milotic and a neutral Mega Kangaskhan, an overwhelmingly powerful duo. Well, this is my favorite example of this play, since it involves a friend of mine.
Bro, that's crazy. Looking at your opponent, oh yeah, I got you.
Recognizing its strength in real time. It's far from the last time Wolfe has pulled it off. Wolfe went on to win a regional with Milotic in 2018 with a similar strategy, executing this bait several times during his streamed games in that season, even doing so at the World Championship. While it may look simple, this play shows not only Wolfe's ability to recognize common trends in competitive play, but also his ability to build inventive strategies that bait and exploit them to an absurd degree of success. Number 3.
Wolfie! Wolfie compet.
You're saying that this dude is using Perish Song? Bro, that killed me so many times in Nuzlocke. Perish Song, Politoad. Damn.
While some players have signature Pokemon or styles of teams across the years, none have the same level of intimidating aura as Wolfe playing with the Perish.
Protect, Weather Ball, Perish Song, and Encore. Damn. Almost every Pokemon has Protect. I'm learning a lot.
Song Shadow Tag strategy, often known as Perish Trap. Perish Song is a move that starts a 3-turn timer after being used. Once this timer expires, all Pokemon that heard the Perish Song faint, regardless of their HP totals. This is an incredibly powerful move in Pokemon VGC, since you can KO 2 Pokemon, half of your opponent's team of 4, with one move. There's just one catch. The Perish Song status expires whenever a Pokemon switches out, which is fairly simple counterplay. However, when a Pokemon with Shadow Tag is on the field, opposing Pokemon can't switch out, forcing them to faint to the Perish Song. Once you know the Perish Trap combo is coming though, the counter...
I don't care. If you're using this strategy against me, you're just very, very annoying.
KO the Shadow Tag user and switch, or KO the Perish Song user to disrupt their main form of offense. To consistently win with Perish Trap teams, the user needs to have an extremely precise understanding of defensive play, considering not just this turn, but multiple turns in the future to set the stage for a Perish Song victory. It's incredibly rare to compete at the top level with this style of team, but despite that, Wolfe has won not 1, not 2, but 3 regional championships with Perish Trap teams.
That's crazy. Winning 3 times with the same strategy requires some serious skill. I don't care, bro.
Without even mentioning that Wolfe's only brought Perish Trap to regionals 3 times. Add in a recent Perish International Championship win, and you start to understand the level of mastery Wolfe has over the strategy. While Wolfe's Toronto Regional Finals win against Marco Silva, one of the best Pokemon players in the modern era, is one of his most high-profile Perish Trap wins, I honestly debated placing a Wolfe Double Protect, Switch, Protect montage here. I decided to highlight this WolfeyCon Perish moment from his 2015 finals versus future international champion Ashton Cox. The match that put Perish Trap on the map.
If you know, you know. He's wearing a Burger King crown. I don't care, bro. That's crazy.
It's game 1, and Wolfe's Perish Song Shadow Tag Mega Gengar is threatened by Choice Scarf Landorus Therian Earthquake. Wolfe can Perish Song and switch to Intimidate Scrafty to survive the Earthquake, but losing Shadow Tag to Ashton reading that switch and using Thunderbolt on his Gengar will immediately lose Wolfe the game. His back is against the wall, but Wolfe Glick has a trick up his sleeve. Eject Button Amoonguss. Eject Button is uncommon in Pokemon competition, since it's rarely advantageous to be forced to switch when your own Pokemon takes damage. However, rarely isn't never. Wolfe switches out his Gengar to Scrafty, foregoing Perish Song and Shadow Tag pressure. Landorus's Earthquake strikes Amoonguss, activating its Eject Button and allowing Gengar to come back in. Wolfe can now fake out and disable the Landorus slot to lock it into Struggle, then bring in Amoonguss to use Rage Powder, redirecting Rotom's attacks away from Gengar, and win the game with minimal risk.
Bro, that's crazy to do that. Oh my god, that's crazy.
Risk in future turns with Perish Song. This play shows Wolfe's multi-turn foresight on full display, as well as his keen understanding of how to play himself out of tricky turns. Consistent plays on this level have made the Perish Trap archetype his signature across the years, and have even made the best players in the world wary of WolfeyCon Perish. Number 2. Trick Attack. This next play isn't from a tournament set, but rather from Wolfe's YouTube channel at the start of Pokemon Sword and Shield, when his channel took off in popularity and Wolfe began focusing on content full-time. Pokemon Sword and Shield introduced a new central mechanic that allowed Pokemon to transform for 3 turns into a Dynamax form, doubling its HP and gaining access to powerful max moves once per battle. Most previous means of disrupting offensive Pokemon didn't work on Dynamax Pokemon. Flinching with Fake Out didn't work since Dynamax Pokemon can't flinch, Protect didn't fully block Dynamax moves, and Roar, Whirlwind, and Red Card failed, since Dynamax Pokemon are immune to an opponent's switch-forcing moves and items. Needless to say, Dynamax changed everything in competition, and in the first few weeks of the game's release, competitive players were all trying to figure out how to defend against it. Meanwhile, Wolfe and his friends were doing this.
Bro, that's crazy that they're laughing so hard on stream. Bro, I imagine doing this in the competitive. And someone over there is like, bro, I have to win this game. And your opponent is just laughing. Bro. Crazy.
Oh my god, I can't breathe.
Confused? Alright, time to admit that I buried the
Bro's
lead
crying.
a little bit in my introduction of Dynamax. While Dynamax Pokemon can't be forced to switch by an opponent's moves or items, it doesn't stop force switches from your own Pokemon's items. Thus, if a Dynamax Pokemon is hit while holding an eject button, it is forced to switch. To use this offensively, you can equip eject button to a prankster user to use an increased priority trick or switcheroo before a Dynamax Pokemon can attack. Then follow up with another fast attack to completely nullify Dynamax if you read it on the turn they begin their transformation. While this requires a pretty big read and commitment of resources, it gives you a massive advantage if it works, sacrificing an item to be able to play the rest of the battle with your own Dynamax while your opponent had theirs wasted. Now, I think this moment represents Wolfe in many ways. Competitively, it shows his ability to read his opponents and perform a complete reversal of their expectation using every resource or game mechanic available to him, regardless of how obscure. More casually, it's always been clear that despite how seriously Wolfe takes Pokemon, he's also willing to lean into his love for the game and really have fun with it. In my opinion, the combination of these are a big part of him accumulating a massive fan base since then, and this play is personally my favorite example of this.
Bro, he's so crazy to just think of new strategies. I mean, Parasong, surely some people could have thought of a strategy with Parasong, but an eject button on a Dynamax Pokemon?
Wolfe turns heel. Wolfe is so strong that in the time it took me to write and edit most of this video after his Toronto Regionals win, Wolfe won the European International Championships, which was the biggest Pokemon tournament ever. While his gameplay was astoundingly good throughout the tournament, after an intense finals match, it was his victory speech that caught everyone's attention, and I'll just let his words speak for themselves here.
Honestly, I'm just thinking about the scope. The biggest official Pokemon tournament of all time. 1,400 players trained their Pokemon, traveled to London, practiced with a friend, worked on their team. 1,400 people showed up to this tournament hoping and dreaming to win the entire thing. But it wasn't enough!
Bro, that's crazy. It wasn't enough. But 1,400 people, bro, that's some kind of dedication. Durzen? No. I don't have the time.
Speaking of not enough,
and the skill,
with
of course.
all eyes on him, Wolfe announced that the mysterious, unrevealed winner of the Global Challenge, a massive international online tournament, was none other than himself. Despite having an automatic Worlds invite already and having nothing to play for in the tournament, Wolfe pushed himself to win, seemingly just to flex that he could. Wolfe has often played around with ego on stream, but here he absolutely turned the bravado up to 11, while still keeping it respectful to competitors and just stating the facts. At this point, VGC feels like his to lose, and with 3 consecutive major tournament wins, it's hard to argue with him. Wolfe's EUIC victory speech was incredible.
Bro, he's some kind of different aura. Like this for the crowd, that's crazy.
Incredible theater. But it's so recent at the time of recording this that I can't say where it should fall on this list. However, if Wolfe's heel turn stands the test of time, it may one day challenge number 1 on this list for most iconic Wolfe moment. Number 1. World Champ difference. At the end of the day, what else could number 1 be but the play that won Wolfe the Pokemon World Championships? The culmination of years of hard work, this play comes at the 2016 World Championships, 4 years after his previous finals appearance. Since then, he'd been in striking distance twice, but missed out on the chance at the final top 8 bracket both times due to resistance, Pokemon's controversial tiebreaker system. Getting into finals, he's up
with resistance? Bro, imagine not making the final 8 because of resistance. Bro, I would not sleep for days.
Times due to resistance, Pokemon's controversial tiebreaker system. Getting into finals, he's up 1 game in the set, but vulnerable to losing and sending it to a game 3. Wolfe is up 3 Pokemon to 2 with Fake Out available on his Hitmontop, Trick Room is up, and Rayquaza is vulnerable with lowered defenses. If Wolfe gets this turn wrong, his opponent can mount a comeback. Using Fake Out into Groudon will stop a powerful eruption and allow Wolfe to hit Groudon with Rayquaza, weakening further eruption since its base power is determined by remaining HP. However, taking a Gyro Ball on Rayquaza could leave Wolfe open to a KO next turn. Alternatively, using Fake Out into Bronzong stops Gyro Ball, but will allow Groudon to use Eruption, knocking out Hitmontop and allowing Wolfe's opponent to follow up the next turn with Skill Swap onto his own Groudon, resetting Desolate Land against Kyogre and allowing it to take a double KO. The players weigh the options and the play starts. Wolfe's Rayquaza Mega Evolves and Primal Groudon protects, covering for Fake Out into it. Wolfe seems taken aback, and his opponent looks up, shocked, allowing himself the hope that he has found a way to start the comeback that could lead to him winning the game, and potentially the World Championship. Fake Out comes out.
Wolfe looked up and he was, nah, bro. Come on, man. Don't do this to me.
And it's into Bronzong. As Rayquaza clicks Swords Dance, now perfectly poised to win the battle, Wolfe playfully grins at the
Swords
camera,
Dance
having
mega
won that
crazy.
turn
That's crazy. You, bro.
and the mental battle. The hope from his opponent's eyes now gone. With the +2 attack boost on Dragon Ascent, Wolfe has the damage he needs to KO the Groudon before going down. In Shades of 2012, Wolfe's Hitmontop close comments his opponent's Trick Room user, but this time, instead of crushing defeat, it will result in a sweet deserved victory, and the birth of the World Champ difference. While this may well be his most flashy read, Wolfe and his opponent later recount that by double attacking instead of protecting Groudon, his opponent had a near guaranteed win that neither recognized at the time. However, nobody knows better the amount of pressure that the World's Finals can bring than Wolfe, and exploiting cracks under pressure is part of being a top player. More than the play itself though, it's the way that Wolfe has fun the entire way through that makes this clip truly iconic. While there are countless examples of Wolfe's stream antics before and after this moment has become a big part of Wolfe's brand, and seeing him play games up for the camera are part of why his fans love watching him play. At its highest level, I believe Pokemon is a game bursting with potential for skill expression and personality, and no one,
I agree. If you show up at the tournament with low pony, that says something about your personality.
embodies that idea better than Wolfie. From these moments and the history behind them, you start to see why Pokemon's most popular player, Wolfe Glick, became an icon.
Very good video. Very good video. Wolfie, also a little bit goofy. Because if you look at the moments, every time he's realizing he's winning, bro does something goofy and crazy. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so please help me. Oh damn, voice crack. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.